Welcome back to another episode of Wicked Darkness. I'm Kathy, your host, and with me tonight we have Steve.
Hello.
We have Debbie.
Hello.
We have Nicole.
Hi.
And we have Jessica.
Hey.
And we have Scott, who's in the background. So tonight we're going to be talking about, it's not so much paranormal, but everybody has experienced it. It's called Deja Vu. And Deja Vu in French really means already seen. So we've all had some kind of, and I'm assuming everybody's had some kind of form of deja vu. Like you've already experienced whatever you're experiencing right now. It just seems off. Like you'll be walking through an area or doing something, and then all of a sudden it's like, I feel like I've done this in the same situation before. And maybe other people have experienced it with you during that time period, or maybe it's just you, but that's what deja vu is. So Steve, you want to talk about this? I know you were excited to do deja vu.
Well, and you're right. It's not so much of being paranormal, but, it's kind of a freaky thing when it happens to you, because you're, like you said, I've experienced this. I can hear myself talking, by the way. There's like weird feedback on my side.
Yeah, there is a kind of weird feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I can hear it right there.
It's probably me.
No, it's not. But anyways, yeah, I just think it's an interesting, and reading on it, not realizing there was more research into it than I thought, as far as actually being a medical issue. It can turn into a medical issue if it happens too much, and you have different kinds of to that. Yeah, I think that, I read that different studies, it says between 60 and 90% of people have experienced deja vu at least once in their lifetime. But if it starts happening to you more than a few times a month, or if it's a weekly issue, then you might have some medical problems going on. So, but I think the whole thing is weird. It just anything, conversations, walking in a room, and you're like, wow, I know exactly where I am, but I've never been this place before, or never heard that before. Which I was reading also, it sounds like sometimes that your frontal lobes kind of crisscross, and it's trying to bring memories together of past things you've seen. Like one of the examples, I walked into an office, and I thought I was there in the past right away, but it's just your mind telling you that you've seen offices that had that color desk and that stuff, that color paint on the walls, and it's just your way for your mind to justify the feeling that you're saying, well, I've been here before. So I think it's really interesting stuff. But to me, I kind of got scared because it seems like deja vu. I mean, it seems like it's happened a ton of times over my lifespan. So,
right. Well, they say it's kind of like a glitch in your thought process.
Yep.
But they also say that, like, the more that you experience it, the more you're open to paranormal activity. Which is, yeah. Of course he would. He goes, movie. So, could it be where you're more in tune to things, that your surroundings? You guys have all experienced deja vu, I'm assuming, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Have any of you experienced it with somebody else? Like you both were like, I feel like we've been here in the same spot before, doing the same exact thing before.
Not that I could remember.
We've done it.
Yeah, Scott and I have done it.
Really?
Yeah,
and
together we'll be doing something, and I'm like, we both stop and look at each other like, this feels very familiar.
I think I've experienced that as well. I don't remember with who, but it sounds very familiar.
But they also say that sometimes that, kind of like in the paranormal field, that when we experience some kind of phenomenon, that it's a thin veil between the two dimensions. Like there's a parallel dimension. Kind of like the
Mhm.
fork in the road. You make one decision, you go this direction. You make another decision, you go this direction. But the opposite, is whatever is happening, whatever you decided somewhere on the opposite side of this parallel world, you're doing the opposite decision. And
Mhm.
that's kind of like the same thing with deja vu. It's kind of like that veil is thin and you've repeated it. Not to say that everything is exactly the same, but you felt like you've been there doing that stuff before. And like you said, Steve, you've never been there before. You've never experienced it that you're aware of.
One other thing I read too, it was saying that that people that experience it, it's always, or not always, but generally it's indoor settings and not outdoor settings, which I thought was interesting because I think I've had indoor and outdoor deja vu experiences.
Scott says the same thing. He's had indoor and outdoor. And I
Yeah.
have too. I feel like I've had it. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. Like, I know, like, the other day, was it today or was it yesterday? Scotty, our son, actually said deja vu. And we're like in the house here and we're doing something and he's like, yeah, I feel like deja vu. We're like, we haven't done any of this stuff before. He's like, but I feel like I've done this already.
Weird.
It was weird. But I was reading it as also, like you were saying too, that it's more of a medical issue too. Like people that experience like schizophrenia, epilepsy, anxiety, those people all have experienced deja vu a little bit more than the average quote unquote person, whatever average is nowadays.
Mhm.
But did you know that there's like a bunch of different deja vus though?
I was just gonna say that, and I thought I had saved it, and I can't find it now. But yeah, there was like 6 or 7 different kinds.
Like different levels of them?
Not different
Yeah.
levels. It's like different things. So I'm not even going to attempt say because I don't speak French and I'm not going, it's deja and it's not vu, but it's something else to it. And I'm not even going to attempt these words because like I said, I don't speak French. But there's one that is already heard, already experienced, already done, already thought, already recounted, already felt emotionally or already smelled,
Weird.
already known, like the knowledge of, already found, already lived through, and already wanted. I didn't know there was like all these different ones.
Me neither.
I thought deja vu was just deja vu.
I mean, but don't you think when you think about it, that I mean, it all means the same thing. It just depends what you experience. I guess you could put a different name on each one of those, but
Right.
you're still in the act of having a deja vu episode, right? I
Right.
mean,
I don't think
I
I'm going to
think
sit
that
there
they
going,
see
I
that.
have deja vu of this. And you
There was
imagine
one of them that
standing around saying like, I have deja vu of already thought of.
I would think that to me, it seems like when I've experienced it that I can remember, it was more of the happened before thing. Like this happened to me before.
Yeah.
More than.
I seem to get it when I'm in the car. Do you guys ever get that? Like when you're driving and then you're like, I feel like, now granted, yes, I go the same route pretty much every single day going to work. I'm not saying that, but like driving down the road in certain area and a song will come on the radio or I'll be talking to somebody in the car and I feel like I've already done this before. Do you guys ever have that?
Creepy. It is an eerie feeling.
It is. And then I'm like, okay, well, were these cars around before? How are these cars around? Like, there's no way that we all were traveling. And again, I travel the same route pretty much every morning to go into work and every afternoon coming home from work. So yes, I do see some cars in the morning going, oh, hey.
Same. Yeah.
the BMW over there, and there's the Fiat over there, and like I've seen you guys. Okay, you're running late because normally you're already about 5 minutes in front of me.
Maybe it's another schedule.
Right. So
Right.
I see those cars, but then, it's not that kind of a feeling though. It's like everything happening all at once.
Yeah. And to me, that's what that feeling is, like all at once. Just it happens so quick, when you say either to people around you or yourself, "Oh, deja vu," and then it's you go on with what you're doing. It's such a weird feeling for that second, that you're thinking this. I've done this before. I've seen this before. It's just an odd feeling.
Do you guys remember any ones that have been like really like stuck out as far as deja vu?
I remember I was really young. I was in high school still, and I was a teacher. And whenever I had a deja vu, he was always convinced that something was either telling your brain that something bad was going to be happening, but he would always do something freakish, like we would be at McDonald's and he would jump on top of the table and just start dancing. Like he would always want to break my deja vu because he was nervous about something possibly like your brain is maybe forewarning you. That's just was his theory. And it was funny because it made you giggle because it was kind of obnoxious.
So in his thought process, every time you had deja vu, it was always something negative then?
I wouldn't say personally for me, but whenever I said it to him, I think he would get nervous. Like, he just didn't want it to continue, I guess. I enjoy a deja vu because it doesn't happen often, but it's never frightening to me. It's just like you try to put your finger on it, and it's eerie. Yeah, I like having deja vus.
Debbie, have you ever experienced any weird deja vu?
Oh, yeah. Some years back, my girlfriend and I, we went out to Seattle, and the lady we stayed with, she said, well, Seattle has, it's really haunted, and they have walking tours and stuff like that. So she dropped us off at one of the meeting spots, and we all met inside. And then when the guy came to lead us, we walked outside, and it was like this translucent sheet just kind of like came down and like covered my eyes so that I couldn't see really well. And I grabbed on my friend and I'm like, something weird's going on. And we started walking, and I said, we're coming up to an old fire station. And we walked, and when we reached the corner, yes, there was an old abandoned fire station, and all of the people in our group was lined up against the wall, and it was just, I almost felt like I could have passed out because it was so strong, the feeling that I had, like, okay, I've been here before, I've been here with these people, I didn't even know their names, but it's like I'd been there before, I knew these people, I looked into the building, and yes, it was an old fire station, and it probably only lasted a minute, if that, and then it was over. But it was so strong, and I've had deja vu in the past, but I've never had anything that strong since that experience.
And you've never been to Seattle up until that point?
Right. It was our first trip to Seattle.
Wow.
But it was just so weird. It's like I'm grabbing onto my friend, and it's like, I think I'm going to pass out. And she goes, no, you're not. So then,
oh dear.
Yeah. So then, we continued our tour, but I never felt that experience with any other locations that he took us to. But it was just so weird that something like that came over me so strong that I would have wanted to just sit down and wait for the whole thing to be over. But yeah, it's pretty freaky.
Jessica, have you had anything?
Nothing really majorly weird, just little things here and there.
Okay.
But one thing I was kind of reading into it when I was looking up stuff was past life experiences.
Ooh.
So like maybe in her past that he lived there was something from there, like stuff like that.
Almost like a reincarnation. Like,
Right.
you know,
Like maybe it's something that, was something like if the whole past life experience thing, if
Right.
that's what you think is right, if that exists, then maybe it's like you've been in that area or situation in a previous life and it triggers your brain.
Well, yeah, I guess, deja vu kind of is kind of like time traveling, I guess, in a way.
I've been here before.
Like that feeling of
sure.
it.
Yeah, I could see that.
Well,
Be like multiverse though?
it could be multiverse. Yeah. Well, that's that parallel thing that I was talking about.
Or
Yeah.
it's broken.
Oh, see, now Scott went Matrix. He says the Matrix is broken.
No.
Did you take the red pill or the blue pill?
The red. Me too. That's funny.
So I mean, what do they always say? Everybody has had a past life. But here's the thing though, if we had a past life and that's what you were experiencing, Debbie, wouldn't it be like you had to have been through this? Granted, yours was the old fire station, you said. Do you remember about when it was around?
Just the fact that it was the old fire station
Okay.
before I even got there to know that it was there.
So probably like early 1900s ish, maybe even before that.
I've been told that I have past lives.
So nothing like from like 1950 or 1960 or something like that. It had to have been like way before that. So it could have been a past life. Because what do they say? That if you have past lives, it's more of when you pass on from this life, did you complete everything you were supposed to from your previous life? Did you complete all of it? Or were there some things that you didn't complete?
Like purgatory?
Kind of.
In the middle.
You kind of go on until you get everything right. And if you feel like you've gotten everything right,
you should.
And you have no regrets or anything like that, you're good throughout your life. And you're at, death's door and going, okay, welcome me back. I am good. I finished everything I was supposed to. So, they do that where you can get hypnotized. And I've seen that on TV, obviously. I haven't seen it in person. But I've seen it, on TV where they hypnotize a person and they go back. Like there was one that I watched. She kept getting drawn to this house. Kind of like you were, Debbie, where you were going down the street and you're like, there's a fire station. Like, could you have been a person that lived there at that point? Or were you a firefighter in a previous life?
Right.
This one was where she kept going to the same house. She was drawn to this house and she didn't know why. She loved this house. Well, when they brought her into the hypnosis, come to find out, she lived there in a previous life with the family then. And she was the daughter of that family that lived there in like the 1800s or whatever. Oh, wow. And so that was why she was drawn to that house. And it was weird because they went back through like 3 or 4 different lives that she was in. And they're like, okay, you go back to this point. And okay, well, I was this person and I, did XYZ. And then they're like, okay, now go back a little bit further. Okay, I'm now this person. And I went and I lived in this area. And then they were able to finally get back to where it was, this house. And like I said, she was the daughter of whoever it was that built the home. And she tragically passed away in the home. It was like she had a baby, and during the birth, she ended up passing away. And so when she came into this life, she was still drawn back to what was familiar to her in a past life, which is kind of.
I just read an article a couple of days ago about a child, 8, 9 years old, who had passed away, and they brought him back to life. Wow. And after that, he knew all kinds of stuff about
All right,
a world
dogs.
about a World War II pilot, and
Wow.
he knew details of this pilot's life and the plane that he flew during the Second World War and battles that he
Yes.
was in. And, half the stuff this kid knew is not in any kind of history books. I mean, it wasn't like a guy who's super famous World War II pilot. So,
Hmm.
and he finally, said, because that was me, and
Yeah, like he was able to describe like he was in a flight in a Mustang.
yeah,
I don't know.
P-51 Mustang.
Yeah, yes, I
P-51 Mustang.
remember. Yes.
Yes. And he could
And-
describe the panel, with all the instrument panels, and he, like I said, he knew that pilot's name, people that this pilot was friends with, back in the Second World War, and this kid's only like 8 or 9 years old.
Mhm.
Weird.
So yeah, and then finally he said, "I know that because that was me," So I thought there's still obviously people investigating this, thinking the kid's full of crap,
Right.
but
Yeah, but he knew a lot of details. A
he
lot.
knew details that weren't published anywhere. They had to go back and do all
Possible.
this
Right.
checking with, family members and old friends, and
Because wasn't he able to tell him what his name was, I believe?
he was, and he
And
Oh
like
my
his
God.
rank and everything.
yeah, and I think how it all started, he first described the, if World War II, the pilots always wear leather jackets, and they always had their squadron patch and all that stuff. And that's what he described at first. Like, where's my jacket? I need my jacket,
Wow.
And that started going from there. Then he just started remembering more about the plane and the battles that he flew in. And that pilot had died. He was shot down.
I think there's something similar to like an 8-year-old or maybe even younger was describing the Titanic.
What?
Yeah.
That would be cool.
Right. And that's the thing is like, is deja vu your past life? Because that's wild. Like some of the details these kids, because there was one I was like reading, it was like, it's not funny. It's like a baby, when they first cry, they say that their first cry out of the mom's womb is actually them crying in pain from their previous life.
Oh
Isn't
no.
that crazy to think of?
Jesus.
Right. I never thought of that before.
Mm-hmm.
Like here is like, oh, it's my child. Like our son Scotty came in this world and he'll say what is it? Jotunheim? I don't know what he is. It's something, it goes with Norse mythology and everything. It's a blue giant thing because he came in, the cord was wrapped around his neck. He was blue. Scott and I were freaking out after I just delivered this baby who's now blue and has a cord wrapped around his neck and he's not breathing. He's not crying. What is wrong with my child and everything? Okay, so now this theory comes in of he's crying when he takes his first breath. He's crying because he's still feeling the pain from his death. That's kind of, I don't know what I don't know how I feel about that.
It's an infant. That's
Right.
sad, right? I don't know. Do you ever hear about like when somebody does pass? Like usually there's somebody born at that very moment.
I actually experienced that at the hospital.
At the hospital?
Yeah. So what happened was I got called because I used to work in the EKG department. I had to go to all calls. Any kind of code, I go to it. So we got called up to the birthing unit, and I'm in the OR, not actually in the OR. I'm in, like, I can see everything. I'm in where they would normally, the surgeons would, or the doctors would, wash up and everything. And I'm standing there waiting. I'm on standby. And mom is having problems with delivery. And finally, baby does come out, but she's not breathing. She's not crying or anything. Shortly after the baby comes out, another code comes in from the 2 floors down. And an elderly person passed away. As soon as that person was called and, they called the time of death or whatever, the baby took her breath and cried.
Do they do the ring a ding 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 dong when
They do, yeah, they do
Yeah.
the lullaby. Then
So you're like,
the babies.
"Ugh."
Yeah. So, but that was kind of weird. Like we were all standing there going, "Oh my God, the person," and it was a female that had passed away. And we're like, "Oh my God, we just listened to somebody pass away and we just witnessed somebody being born at the
Wow.
same exact time." That was an odd feeling in the hospital that day. We were all just like kind of in awe. Like, did we just experience something like a phenomenon?
Bizarre, yeah.
Yeah. So
Maybe the baby's first cry isn't so much pain from dying, but sadness from their past life being gone. That's a little less than it makes you feel a little better about
it does make you feel a little bit better.
A little bit better.
I like yours better than the one that I heard.
I mean, yeah. Was it a lady that had passed away? Was it also a little girl that was born?
Yeah,
Or did we not know? It was?
it was. Yep. The lady that passed away was in her 80s. I don't remember specifics and I can't say them anyway, but
It's still a good life, 80 years old.
yeah, she was 80 years old, passed away. And then the baby girl was born right there.
Was she? Well, you weren't there for the birthing, right?
No, I was.
Oh, but she's
So
screaming.
my coworker was downstairs because we have multiple machines. My coworker was downstairs during the elderly woman's passing, and she had called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to head back to the office. They just called it." And I said, "Okay, well, I'm waiting. The baby hasn't taken her breath yet, so I still have to be here." And as soon as we got off the phone, baby took a breath.
Wow, that is cool.
Right.
To be in the same hospital too,
But it's also sad too. It's like we just witnessed somebody pass away and then another person was born. It's kind of sad,
It would be interesting to see how depending on how old this little girl is now, to talk to her to see if she remembers anything from her past.
See, here's another weird thing. So our son Scotty, he was born in August. My father was also born in August. My father passed away when Scotty wasn't even here. I was 6 months pregnant with him. Mm-hmm. And my father passed away. So my father knew that we were having another son. So in my father's casket is a picture of our two older boys and the ultrasound picture of Scotty. So he knew he was having another grandson. He wanted a granddaughter eventually. He took us a couple tries. But we finally got him a granddaughter. He just wasn't here for it. But here's the weird thing. So my father's birthday is August 27th. My son's birthday is August 25th. I was 6 months pregnant when my dad passed away. Very traumatic. I was close to my dad. But as my son has grown up, he has a lot of similarities to my dad.
Oh.
He likes to listen. We talked about this today, actually. He's got an old soul. Like he likes to listen to the music my dad listened to, which is big band and like stuff like that. He likes to listen to older music. He likes classical music too and stuff like that. But he does a lot of things that my dad would do. And when we look at pictures of him, he looks like my dad too at certain ages. So it's just kind of odd. Like he'll say something and I'm like, I'll sit there and look at him. I'm like, how do you, my dad would say something like that, but, and he always says, he's like, I don't fit in with the groups now. I like the kids now. He doesn't fit in with them. He knows that he doesn't like the music that they like. And
you can't explain some of that,
Yeah. And he does
other than it's an old soul.
Well, yeah. And he'll do stuff and he'll like stand there and his sister will sit there and go, "You look like an old man." But the same thing though, it's like you weren't around then, but it was, after my dad had passed, our son was born, and he did a lot of the same, liked a lot of the same things my dad liked, but he never met him. Is that a genetic thing?
I was just gonna ask that. It's gotta be mannerism. Maybe even sometimes the way he struts. I noticed that with like my brother. He walks like my dad, but they haven't talked like in years. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God, he's got dad's strut. And if I told him, he'd be so bent out of shape. It's not like he tries to do it,
Right.
Some of the mannerisms you just can't explain. Like, I guess the old soul is the perfect way.
Yeah, and he's always been that way. He's always had like an old soul. And sometimes I'm like, are you my fucking reincarnated?
Top hat.
Wouldn't it be weird? And the other thing I heard was like, and I know it's not on the same topic of deja vu, but it always says like, they always say that there's like our family dynamics, the people in our family are the same people from our past. It's just that they have changed different roles.
Weird.
So like your father is now your brother. Or your grandfather is now your brother. Or your aunt is now, your great aunt is now, whoever. But it's changed. I don't know. I don't know. What do you guys think of that theory?
I hope not. I don't know.
It's a weird thought.
Yeah, that's a very weird thought.
Can you imagine like your grandfather, Scott, is actually your brother? Because your grandpa passed away before your brother was born.
Yes.
So if that was the case, then your grandpa was reincarnated as your brother.
But wouldn't he have to have the same traits or similar traits?
Not necessarily. They just say that we've just switched roles throughout the lifetimes.
Why would you be reincarnated back into the same family?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what I'm like. I hope not. That's kind of scary.
That's what I'm saying. There's all these different theories out there of like reincarnation.
Because talking about like that little kid, he wasn't part of that family,
Right.
Right. I don't know. It's just.
I wonder if that little kid shared the same birthday. It wasn't like your hospital, like where he died and then baby was born.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I mean, before he had his accident and passed away, and they resuscitated him, he had never talked about World War II, and being a fighter pilot. So, and that's pretty recent. I just was reading that just recently again. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we had a client a few years ago that was saying that their child would make certain comments and stuff like that, like they remember their family, their other family.
Yeah.
And it was kind of throwing them off, like, what do you mean your other family? And the same thing, describing everything.
This person that used to be my mom, not you, the mom before you. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of those things too with kids that are like, oh, not you, my mom before. And their moms are like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
something happened and now I'm here. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
It is just a little bit off the subject, but I think I might have sent it to you, Jess. I don't know, might have been, we were talking about, and it's kind of purgatory deja vu. Like, children will walk into the other room and they're like, hi, Papa.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Papa. And Mom's like, what do you mean, Papa? And then she'll get up and walk over to him and she's like, come on over here to the kitchen. I don't know who you're waving to in the bedroom. Like, yeah, but you never even met Papa. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, it can. I mean, do you think
that's more
than adults? I think so.
That's why they can remember things like past life things too, because they're so close to it still that there's still remnants that are kind of remembering those things. Like my daughter. I mean, this isn't really like on that topic, but I think that's how we got on the subject was. When she was little bitty, would be up at like the same time every night, be talking to and waving to nobody. And then one night was waving and just said Dada. Her Dada died before she was born. There is no Dada, like.
It was always at the same hour too, wasn't it? It was like the witching hour or whatever.
But then that phased away and it doesn't happen anymore. Like so, I mean,
Thank
like
God.
the older they get, the less they are sensitive to those things, I think, including like memories
Okay,
and
so going with that theory, so saying that they're experiencing somebody that had passed, and they're with that person in their spirit form because they're still close to that person because they had just kind of, as little kids, they always seem to be a little bit closer to the spirit world because they haven't been around to be desensitized by everything else. So going with that theory, as adults, the deja vu that we're experiencing, is that from the past life then? As a child, you were experiencing things and you were telling your parents, I see pop or whatever. But as an adult, now you're going with the deja vu of now I'm experiencing this from before and I don't know why I'm experiencing it. Is it because you're experiencing what pop experienced?
Possibility.
Does that even make any sense? I don't know if that even made any sense. Now I'm saying it out loud.
I think everything is a possibility. We just don't know enough.
Steve, what do you think?
I don't know. I was just thinking, it seems like we're going way off track of our thing here, but we're really not, because I think we're trying to justify that experience. And I'm not sure. I don't know what to think because, again, as you read, I mean, you can have too much deja vu experience, and then there's serious medical issues associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, like the average person, they say it only happens to them, several times in their lifetime. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if deja vu and past life experiences are related somehow. I don't know. I mean, I think past life experiences, what we're talking about, is like a whole different subject as well.
Right.
Because that seems what we are all kind of leaning towards at the moment.
Yeah.
Of the deja vu being related to past life experiences. So that's kind of strange. I'm not sure.
Well, and that's the thing, because I don't know either. I'm not sure how to.
No, and I'm not either. And it's a conflicting thing. I mean, we all believe in the paranormal. We've all had paranormal experiences, but and I didn't want to reach this subject, but I was brought up Catholic, the Catholic grade school for 8 years. There was no such thing as past life, and you're born, and then you die. There's no more, either go to heaven or you go to hell or you go to purgatory. There's no the rebirth of the Catholic Church is going up to heaven. 25, 30, 40 years ago, people, even in the Catholic Church, said, if you believe in paranormal, we got to really think if you belong in this religion, because there's no such thing.
Right.
There's the devil, but so yeah, I just think it's all strange. And the past life thing, I mean, I think there's nothing that isn't possible. Let's say that, because I've experienced weird things in my life, and like everybody else has, I mean, just think of like near-death experiences. I mean, everybody's had that,
Right.
See my life flash before my eyes type of thing, so I don't know. The deja vu thing, to me, I believe it's something. It can't be nothing, you know what I mean? Because it's happened to too many people, and too many people experience it and remember it. And you remember because it freaks you out when it happens.
Right.
You're like, oh, that's weird, man, And so it can't be, we can't all be crazy, I mean, we're not all having medical issues when this happens. So, there's something to it. And, there's a lot of stuff, you can Google and read and blah, blah, blah. And I watched some YouTube stuff, but it doesn't really go to much of any kind of experiences at all. Just keeps on pointing back to medical issues, which I don't believe that either. I just think that's an easy way to push the subject to the side and be done with it. Sure. Like a lot of stuff that's people don't want to think about or talk about. So yeah, I don't know.
I think we kind of talked about it. We'll probably talk about it again for next week's episode. We'll talk a little bit more into it. For this week, I think we've kind of like brought up the question of what actually is deja vu. Like, what does it mean to everybody? So I think we'll touch on that for next week as well. So right now, I think we'll just say goodbye for right now, and then we'll talk about Deja Vu in part 2 coming up next week. So for our believers, keep believing. For our skeptics, keep us grounded. I'm Kathy, and thanks for listening to another episode of Wicked